Joe Rogan is not funny. And before you get mad with the comments or whatever, I'm not trying to come at this as a hater. In fact, I've been listening to Joe Rogan consistently, probably 2015, 2016. And since about 2017, I've probably listened to every single episode except the ones with Mike Baker, because who trusts his CIA plant? You know what I mean? Gosh. But outside of that, one of the biggest mysteries around Joe Rogan is how the hell is this guy selling out arenas? Now, like I said, I'm not trying to hate here. I am baffled. Baffled. Because this guy is not funny at all, whatsoever, not for 1 minute, maybe on his podcast. But the thing that baffles me most is how has his friends not told him that he's not funny? Why do his friends not tell him? You remember that moment in when Cat Williams came on and he was talking, Joe Rogan was like, there's probably like 250 real comedians. And Cat Williams, bless his heart for being so sweet, sat there, but he sat there like this, looking at Joe Rogan like, why are you talking about this? You know. And I think that this special might finally sink in for him, because I was listening to this podcast, I think this morning, or maybe yesterday, and there was a point, and I didn't look at this till afterwards. There's a point where Joe Rogan says something along the lines of, it doesn't matter what the Rotten Tomatoes score says or whatever, it's your audience. And like, to me, I was like, oh, the critics, like he's saying the critics. Because when I looked at the Rotten Tomatoes score, even the audience ain't with you, bud. Now, why have his friends not said anything? Well, because he makes them all rich and famous. Man, I'd just probably be that guy that didn't care. Like, yeah, he can do his thing, whatever. Put me on the podcast, Joe. Let's go, baby. You know, put me on the podcast, Joe. I'd probably be like Adam Sandler. There was a lot of moments where I noticed Adam Sandler didn't want to talk about certain things. Like Joe Rogan on this episode, for instance, like one of the biggest things that he does is they talked about Chris Farley and stuff like that. And Joe Rogan's just like, and Kennison, and he's just like, oh, they were addicts. You know, and it's just like, God, man. Like, just trying to, you know, instead of, you know, they're dead, right? Instead of trying to live the good times, Joe's just talking about their decline all the time. And I'm starting to notice a pattern around comedy is he talks about the greats, those that can defend themselves. He always talks about their drug addiction and stuff. He always talks about Kennison's drug addiction. Farley, a couple times, I think he's done it. And there's some other people. Oh, like the other guy that made those one-liners that died of heroin. I can't remember his name. He always talks about his addiction. And then he always does this other thing where he talks about this comedy process. And you notice that the gatekeepers and which are people that aren't good at like video games. Like I relate to things of video games, but you can relate to that, like your boss or that isn't good at their job. They always have to talk, and they always have to talk about how there's this process and all these steps, and you have to do this, that, and the other. That's because they're not good at it, and they're somehow in a position where they're faking it. And then that gets them, you know, hold on, let me like this video. I just saw this thing liked up. But they're always protecting their position or whatever relevance they have by like trying to gatekeep, right? Keep people out. Like Joe Rogan's trying to gatekeep with comedy. He's not, but when he talks about it, he sounds like a gatekeeper. I know his club and he has his thing, but I mean, Joe, you need to go through that process, because somewhere along the lines, I think your fame, fear factor, put him out. Because if it wasn't for this podcast and for Fear Factor, Joe Rogan would not be popular. He has never gotten popular off of his comedy. And so I don't really want to hate on it, I just came across this video because I think Joe is way better at podcasting and UFC fight commentary. That's the Joe Rogan I knew. I didn't know Joe Rogan as a comedy until probably I've been listening to him for like 8 years, and Netflix, I think it was recommended Triggered to me, and that was it. And I didn't think it was funny, but the comedy thing, you know, I didn't really pay much attention to. But now, ever since the Comedy Store that he made open, this is like, God, the same process. Gotta, like, you know, you used to think it was bad when he used to tell the eye story, like the UFC doctor looked at him and he said his optical nerve is 37 million times stronger than a human and 40 million times stronger than an ape. And you'd hear that story over and over and over again. And now he just tells his comedy process. So I just wanted to take a look at this video. That was a long intro, but you know, my thoughts. Let's go. When a poser meets a comedy legend from Podcast Cringe. If you don't know Podcast Cringe, he keeps up on all things basically like comedy. Well, basically he just roasts the Joe Rogan sphere or gives the people the due. You know, Shane Gillis is the man. Hey, and if Joe Rogan, you know, all his comedy led to getting Shane Gillis famous, then we can forget this conversation ever happened.
Don't have the brain to understand.
Oh, hold on. Let me turn my speaker off. You know, sometimes you make mistakes.
It's so funny. A comic's brain is so different than
I think stand-up is a form of hypnosis.
Yes.
Do you think so too?
Absolutely. Yeah. I get exactly what you're saying.
You lock them in to the way you're. And when I'm seeing a guy kill on stage, I'm locked in to the way they're thinking. I'm letting them think for me. I'm just like, think for me.
Right.
You know, and they're like, this is so funny. Yes. And it's like, it's a form of hypnosis. And I said the only way that that's going to really work is I have to just be completely dialed in. I prepared for 5 hours the day of the show.
Wow.
Just watching video. I went to the gym. In the gym, I'm listening to my set.
Your own shit. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just like, I want to be just dialed in.
I get like that. Yeah.
100% dialed in.
So
everything, like, the thing is like, there's things in every kind of like hobby or aspiration or career or like craftsmanship oriented thing, just anything you do, there's things that make you better, right? If you put more time into something, obviously you're going to be better. But there's also people that put times into things and they're good at it. You know, I think about, like, even on YouTube, like I've put a fair amount, I don't edit crazy or anything. I just film it. That's about as much as I could do. And I put a lot of time into this and I'm still shit at it, right? But then there's people that put a lot of time into things and that are good at it. And that's not Joe Rogan. But Joe Rogan focuses so heavily on all the things you got to do. But if you put time into something and you just become good, some of that's natural, some of that's hard work. But if you become good and it's undeniable, it's undeniable. But a person that is not undeniable has to always talk. That's like liars, right? Liars will just keep talking. When someone that isn't lying can just explain their position and that's it. You know what I mean? And you just see Joe Rogan in this. Always, there's something, you know. It just, if it was funny, it would be funny, Joe. But you're not going to explain your way into like telling me that this Burn the Boats is good because it was terrible.
Joe Rogan's fresh off his live comedy special, Burn the Boats, which is sitting strong with an IMDb rating of 4.9 out of 10.
I hate dumb people that are confident, you know. Also wrong. I hate dumb people that are wrong and confident.
But another one of the 250 cold-blooded comedy murderers is gearing up for his own special, Love You, due to be released on Netflix globally on August 27th.
That's going to be a banger. I love Sandler.
Sandler has to be pretty close to the top of the...
You know what? I got to understand. I got to, you know, listen. You got to be jealous of Sandler, man. You know, he didn't get blessed with all the, like, typical man features, like tall, super beautiful, muscular, all of that. but he got blessed with probably something better, like that social skill where everybody just loves you. You know, like very few people have it, but if you have it, it's almost better than like being 7 foot tall and having a foot long dick. You know what I mean? As a guy, like you just like everybody thinks fondly of you. That's something I don't have. I just run my mouth too much, right? I say what I think, and that gets you into trouble. But when I see guys like this, I'm just like, God, dude, I'm 6'5". You're right. You know, I got blessed with being tall, like one of my only gifts. And I don't know. Being short's pretty. I don't know if I could give up being tall for being short, but there's a lot of things I would give up, to just be like able to just like be cool with everybody. You know, God, man, it's such a great skill. Anyways, personal problems.
Even though similar to Rogan, he has a net worth estimated to be around $500 million. In fact, back in 2021, he signed a new 4-year movie deal with Netflix worth over $250 million. But the similarities with Rogan don't stop there. Sandler's well known for his generosity over the years and bringing his friends along for the ride. Yeah. So when he appeared on the latest episode of JRE for the first time ever, it was like two heavyweight comedians coming together who had both taken very different paths. Not only are they both approaching 60 years old, they're also only a month apart in age.
I'm just going to put it out there, though. Right here, look at this. This is just random thought. Joe Rogan is jacked, right? We're not Joe Rogan. And he's on all the sauce, all the juice, everything, right? But Sandler kind of looking better, right? Am I wrong? Sandler's kind of looking better. You go, Sandler.
And so, as you can imagine, the conversation was dominated by comedy talk, which for me wasn't such a bad thing. It wasn't like another one of Rogan's disciples going on the podcast to kiss the ring and take their holy sacrament. Adam Sandler's a comedy legend with decades of stories under his belt, so it was looking like it was going to be similar to a Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, or Louis C.K. episode. Except it wasn't. And I think the reason why is because, like I said at the beginning, Rogan is fresh off his own comedy special, so what started out as an interesting conversation turned into a post-special debriefing session with Adam Sandler.
Yeah, it was very awful. It's just like Joe Rogan, he mentioned the Rotten Tomatoes or the critic score thing or whatever it was. I don't remember. He has to be aware of it. And like the internet, I was on vacation, right? I was on vacation and I don't watch much TV anyways. And I didn't have access to YouTube. I didn't have a laptop. I just had my phone. I don't look at my phone very much at all anyways. And I was made aware of how bad this special was. Like it hit me. I was too busy like jumping in the waves and it hit me. And I just don't understand. Like the thing is he's too famous. Nobody's going to tell him he sucks. And to give him to what was said just a minute ago, both these guys have been awesome with their money. Joe Rogan, you got to give him I love his podcast, or I used to like it. It's getting too crazy. It's off track now for me. But he's done great things. He opened that comedy store. A lot of great comedians come out of there. A lot of really bad comedians, like comedians I think that are absolutely like the worst special of all time. Mark Norman's new special has to be the most horrendous, heinous, just insanely terrible thing I've ever seen in my life. I turned it off after like 5 minutes. It was so bad. And I do not know why nobody in the Rogan sphere tells them they're bad. It's not like, I get it. You guys want to be comedians. The only person that is funny, that is part of that Rogan sphere group, or let's say Protect Our Parks, Shane Gillis. Bert Kreischer ain't funny. Tom Segura ain't funny. These are the people Cat Williams were talking about. I'll tell you who they are. Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura, Mark Normand, Ari Shaffir, Joe Rogan. Those are like the main ones, right? And Theo Von. Theo Von's last special was so terrible, I couldn't believe it. But Theo is naturally a funny guy. I just don't know what happened on his last special. I haven't watched anything else. But I would probably, if it was based on comedy specials, it would be Theo Von, for sure. Those are the 6 that Cat Williams was talking about. Joe Rogan is included. Joe Rogan is the main one that's not funny. But I think if it was ranked terrible, it would be Mark Norman, Joe Rogan. No, you got to give Joe a little bit more credit than that. Because Bert Kreischer, I think Mark Norman is way more terrible. Like, I think Mark Norman should never stand on a stage again. But he's kind of funny. Now, he's just that guy that needs attention and just has, like, one-liners. But that's it. I'm trying not to go off because sometimes this stuff is so terrible. Let's just get back in the video.
And even though the podcast went for 2 hours and 17 minutes, they didn't get into the details and talk about Sandler's own comedy specials until the 2 hour and 15-minute mark, literally 2 minutes.
I'm stoked for Sandler's special. So stoked.
To me, it seemed like Sandler just wanted to use the bathroom and keep going.
Hey, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I pee for one?
Yeah, we can wrap this up. We've done 2 hours and 40 minutes.
We did?
Yeah, this is.
We've been in that long?
Yeah, we've been in.
Insane.
This is the setup. Look
that's
this.
my first.
So I'll come back to that in a moment because I want to go through some podcast cringe slop first. Just quickly though, if you haven't already checked it out, there's a link in the description to my Patreon where you can watch my full breakdown of Rogan's latest comedy special.
Why is Tony Hinchcliffe egos out of control?
Including a big one I'm working on right now.
I think Tony Hinchcliffe's funny.
Weekend at MSG with full clips and commentary. So if you're interested, follow the link in the description to sign up and support the channel over on Patreon. But if there's one thing that came out of Rogan's special, it's that he's...
I was just thinking, man, God, man, Shane Gillis, dude. I have to think, you know, like, not everything... You got to thank Joe Rogan for putting Shane Gillis back on the map. Or at least contributing to that. Because Shane Gillis did it. Shane Gillis is going to go down as one of the greatest comedians of all time. He's only just begun. He's only just begun. You know when he does the Trump? It's a great crowd. I don't know. I've been working on it. It's a hard to do Trump. But here we go.
Reached the limits of his creativity as a comedian and storyteller. He rehashed a couple of jokes from previous specials, including one from 15 years ago, and he repeated shit we've heard a million times on the podcast.
Yeah.
And speaking of repeating shit a million times, this episode with Adam Sandler was full of them, but the best one was definitely Rogan's description of what it's like to bomb on stage.
I've eaten it before, but still felt I did good because I remained kind of confident.
Right.
And believing in my shit still. But the ones where I look out, I see them hating me, and I go, yeah, why am I here, man?
I say bombing on stage is like sucking 1,000 dicks in front of your mother.
Yeah.
Dude, and this is why I'm just like losing interest in Joe Rogan. Is because he's just like that guy. And I feel that I noticed that about myself as I gotten older. Like, I'm telling a lot of the same stories and like, or I say a lot of the same things. And it's just like, God damn, you like talk to a bunch of different people. So like, sometimes you have to force yourself, you know, and it's the same with a podcast. You have to force yourself for new information. Not a lot of podcasts you hear are the same story over and over and over and over again. But Joe Rogan's show is just becoming a collection. You got the I story. You got the comedy process. This one, suck 1,000 dicks. There's so many. And you know, honestly, they are bits because he says them exactly the same, word for word, over and over. I just fast forward them now. It's just like Joe Rogan is no longer interested a lot of the time in interviewing people. He's almost interested in getting his points out there and validating himself. Joe Rogan needs validation. And this podcast has now become a validation vehicle for his comedy because he knows, and we all know, he's not funny. And that's not nothing bad, but you need to be put back in the pressure cooker because since Fear Factor, that's the thing pushing your comedy. You need to be put back in the fire, man. You don't have any checks anymore. You're just handing out checks.
It's probably worse than that because somewhere out there, there's probably a guy who wouldn't mind sucking 1,000 dicks. in front of his mom. You know, he'd be like, "Look at me, mom. Look at you made me. 99. Let's go."
So if you're like me, you've probably heard that analogy a bunch of times over the years. So I thought it would be interesting to see the evolution of Rogan's bit about bombing on stage and how he's tightened it and trimmed off the fat over time. Take a look at this little compilation I made for you guys, and then I'll show you how Adam Sandler completely transformed it and made it actually funny.
So what's it like to bomb? That must really be so. That must be so. Anybody ever ask you that?
I always say it's like sucking 1,000 dicks in front of your mother. It's the best way to describe
That's a nice image.
But the problem is,
I don't have that kind of time.
Maybe that's a lot. We'll just be real quick. I'm not saying to climax. You know, you can get through 10 in a short period of time if you got a good head, movement. One of the best things that can happen to a comedian is bombing. When you bomb, that feeling is so bad. I always describe it as like sucking 1,000 dicks in front of your mother. But the difference is that there's probably someone out there who would enjoy sucking 1,000 dicks in front of their mother, but nobody enjoys bombing. So it's probably worse than that. You have to have something wrong with you to want to be a comic, because it's such a brutal, emotional battle.
Yeah.
You bomb so often, particularly in the beginning, and bombing is devastating.
I bet.
It is the worst. I described it as it's like sucking 1,000 dicks in front of your mother. But the thing is, I think there's probably a person out there that wants to suck 1,000 dicks in front of their mother. I doubt there's a person who wants to bomb. The bombing should be enough pain to force anybody out of the business. I'm
gonna fast forward. We get the point, man.
Think probably,
but
no one likes.
Like, I just can't. This is just like.
This is what happens when a poser meets a comedy legend.
Here we go. Let's see. Adam Sandler cleans it up and does. It was.
And Sandler's 10 seconds.
Adam Sandler.
Let's go. My mother would 100% at the end say, "You could have done it better.
Yeah.
You could have sucked them hard. Why did you stop on that one man? He wanted to explode in your face, and you stopped." I feel bad. You should call him and tell him you'll suck his dick. But yeah, I'm with you, buddy.
Okay, now.
Damn, you know, like, if you listen to that Joe Rogan, you know when you're getting led into one of these stories that he tells all the time. And it just seemed like Adam Sandler was like, "We're done with this one. Step aside, young man, and let me just dust you off real quick." You know what I mean? So I was excited. I was like, thank God.
Stop saying that fucking line. Adam Sandler made it funny and now it's over. Let it go. But that's the thing with Joe. It actually makes me cringe watching him pretend to be an elite comedian and associate himself with some of the biggest names in the world.
Stand-up's the best.
It's a crazy thing, and no one can teach you how to do it either. You have to figure it out yourself, because your way of doing it is different than my way of doing it. My way is different than Kevin's way.
Yeah.
Kevin's way is different than Seinfeld's way. Everybody's got a different way of doing it.
Absolutely.
And nobody can teach you how to do it. You can learn some things from watching other people. You can learn some things from...
Oh, man, yeah.
And even just on Kill Tony over the weekend at MSG, he was on the panel for the Friday show and made an appearance at the very end of the Saturday show for a gag with Shane Gillis as Trump after last week's controversy. But when he's on the panel sitting next to guys like Gillis and Hinchcliffe, he looks out of his depth. While the other guys are dropping one-liners and roasting the open micers, he's sitting there giving them advice on how to tighten their sets and improve their game. And everyone's just sitting there.
Hey, props to Joe Rogan, man, for just getting to ride along that ride of like world famous comedians and not being funny. And literally his whole career, he's been able to skate by, because not once have I ever heard Joe Rogan mentioned great comic. Go see Joe Rogan's comedy special. I have never heard that ever. Joe Rogan's podcast, Joe Rogan on UFC, yeah, but like nobody says Joe Rogan's a great comedy unless they're in the presence of Joe Rogan on his podcast or at his club, I'm sure. But if you really asked everybody, if you popped the titty out of their mouth and asked them, "Yo, what do you think about Joe Rogan comedy?" I guarantee it would be.
They're playing along. Maybe I just don't have the brain to understand comedy like these guys do.
That's what I think too. And like, I guess my originally thought behind like watching this video is that like somebody please tell me, please explain it to me. Like, I get we all have different tastes, right? But even when someone is funny and I just don't like their style, I can still see it. But I just can't. I can't see it.
Dude, it's so funny. A comic's brain is so different than a pedestrian's brain.
But getting back to the...
See, you notice all these guys that aren't funny, they got to like try and make you tricked into believing there's some kind of, no, you're either funny or you're not.
Podcast with Adam Sandler. He at least seems to be a fan of Rogan's comedy and complimented his special, particularly the fact that he did it live. And I've got to say, as much as Rogan's comedy doesn't resonate with me personally, I will admit that he did pull off a pretty flawless performance considering it was a live event. However, as usual, Rogan took it a step further, claiming yet again that he sees stand-up as a form of hypnosis.
The problem is with Joe Rogan, if you watch his comedy or his specials, is it's really physical. And he uses his face and his eyes a lot. You'll see Joe Rogan in his special, like, he's really over exaggerates with his face. And it's like he's trying to tell you, like, this is where you laugh. This is where I need your interaction. Because his stuff isn't funny. I think there's even a podcast back in the day where this guy goes, if you notice a lot of comedians that have to be incredibly physical, that rely a lot on their physical performance, and they're not that kind of comedian, like stand-up. He was talking about stand-up comedian, and they're just physical and they're over the top and they're trying to do all this. He's like, you'll realize that a lot of them are not funny. And he said that to Joe Rogan, and I was like, when I saw it years later after seeing his comedy, it came up again on some other podcast, and I was like, because I saw it in this one. If you watch the special, watch his face and his body. He really tries to tell you when he needs your laughs, because the stuff isn't funny. You can always tell when his punchline is coming up because he's going to tell you it's coming up. He's going to show you with his face and his action and tell you with his body. Just another point, I thought.
Like, seriously, I've never seen somebody endlessly analyze the intricacies of making people laugh as much as Rogan does.
See?
Young and I wasn't doing well. I was like, I started doing a guy who was drunk on stage. I started doing a guy who was very nervous. I don't know. I was going for that shit too.
Just trying to find it.
I didn't know what. I'm trying to be comfortable on stage, you know?
Right.
And that's what you had going on your live show. I was like, whoa, shit. Comfortable. And not terrified. You sat in moments, not easy to do.
I was in the zone. When I'm at my best, I'm only thinking about the thing I'm talking about. And then you lock the audience in.
Yes.
I think stand-up is a form of hypnosis.
Sorry, it's just hard. Like, I miss curious Joe Rogan. I miss weed smoke. You know, he's not, I don't even know, but I don't even see him smoking weed a lot. I miss that Joe Rogan, and I get you get older, man. I'm so different than when 20 years ago or 10 years ago, right? In ways, but you know, I think some things you just don't lose, or you try not to lose. And I just think Joe Rogan's so rich. He has no, like he always talks about, you need to be uncomfortable. You need to be uncomfortable. That's what going to the gym is. I get it all out, and then everything's easy. Well, Joe Rogan, your whole life is comfort. Your going to the gym is nothing because you don't have any obstacles anymore. You have so much money, it doesn't matter. You could tell whoever to do whatever. You got a comedy club. You need to get out of your comedy club, and you need to get out of Austin, and you need to go down to Houston and get down in from some other clubs that the fan base isn't yours, and they're not going to laugh at you, because I guarantee if you did that comedy club where Cat Williams performs, you ain't getting no laughs. And that's why you're not a good comedian, because like you said, Joe Rogan, you said 1,000,000 times, another one of your stories, the reason I go to the gym is because it takes all that comfort and I push my body, and then when I finish, you know, you need to do that because you're just walking on pillows. You know, everywhere you go, pillows, they're just throwing pillows out in front of you. Is it soft enough? Is it soft enough? And that's what it is nowadays. You know, like, it's like, come on, Joe. Go back. Be curious. Have a little bit of struggle, you know? Be curious. I could care less about your comedy. a podcast, man. It's getting hard to listen to, dog. This is why I'm doing this, because stop focusing on comedy and make the podcast. You'd have some crazy cool people on there. And now it's all political and the process of comedy. I'll take the I story again, man. I swear, if you stop talking about comedy.
Yes.
Do you think so too?
Absolutely. Yeah.
When I'm seeing a guy kill on stage, I'm locked into the way they're thinking. I'm letting them think for me. I'm just like, think for me.
Right.
You know, and they're like, this is so funny. Yes. And it's like, it's a form of hypnosis. And I said, the only way that that's going to really work is I have to just be completely dialed in. I cut a lot of stuff. You know? But
you know how like this process, and like he told you, like I had to dial in. I was 5 hours going after you know how this process of being funny is just absolute horseshit. Shane Gillis, he said one day, I think it was on his podcast, or he explained his day. He was like, I sleep in or whatever, and I get up and I play video games all day. I eat some food. And then he's like, I take a little nap, and then I get ready like an hour before, and I get to the Comedy Store. And then I do that all over. He's like, I don't want any stress. I just want to play video games. Right? Dream. You know, play video games. I know for some of you it ain't, but for some of us, woo! You know what I mean? But yeah, and that's what Shane Gillis does. And he kills it. He kills it. I'm sure somewhere in there he has to write bits and do obligations to work. But the thing is that Shane Gillis plays video games all day and then gets right back up and destroys on stage, you know? And so the comedy process, whatever.
It's been 6 years since my last special. Like I said, I was thinking about doing a special in August of 2020.
Yeah.
Then the country shut down, and then I didn't do stand-up for 8 months. And when I did do stand-up again, I remember I had to listen to old recordings.
Yeah.
Luckily, I record everything.
I think Joe's mistaking hypnosis for yelling at people and forcing them to laugh. And I think he's right in a way, because the way he stares the crowd down and opens his eyes wide and yells the punchline, it would kind of feel awkward not to laugh if you're standing right in front of you.
Damn, see, you know, like, I think sometimes watching these videos is like, it's either clarity or it's not. It's just so crazy that this guy, for like the third time now, I've said something, and then he says it later, and it's like, okay, I'm not crazy. Okay, you know, God, I swear I didn't even watch this, but that was a proud moment for me, because it's like, yeah, sometimes I'm just like, I just don't get it with Joe. What is that? I wasn't wrong. I wasn't.
So he's definitely got that bit figured out.
So this girl I used to work with, she was like a volleyball player, and she was really hilarious. And she was...
I fucking hate this story. Is this the Kennison?
This is 1986. This is when Kinnison had his HBO special. And she told me about it.
I fast forward through this.
Kinnison's bit made me go to the video store to get a VHS of Kinnison's special. And that was like the first seed in my head where I was like, okay, this is comedy too?
Yeah,
because I didn't know that was comedy. I thought comedy was like something I really liked, but it was so different than me.
Yeah.
It was nothing that I would ever do.
Right.
It was just different. It was like I didn't see myself that way, but I saw that guy. I'm like, that guy's a fucking animal. This is a different kind of comedy. And that was like the first seeds in my head that I had of doing comedy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
He changed comedy. He really did, because there was no comedy like that before Kinnison came around. He was a different kind of comedy.
What do you mean?
Like all of a sudden, comedy was like you could yell. You know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my God, that was the biggest
force.
When he would talk quiet, and then all of a sudden blast the shit out.
Oh my God, and he was a legend at the store.
So it's no secret that Joe got inspiration from Sam Kinison. I actually compared their stand-up styles in my review video of Rogan's special, and even though he's so obviously trying to mimic Kinnison's style, the missing piece for me is the actual joke itself, separate from the delivery. Like I've been saying, Joe's a very good performer. He's great with a mic in his hand, but in my opinion, it's his writing that lets him down. So what we end up with is basically Joe just screaming into a mic with average material.
Yeah.
And I know people have been saying Burn the Boats is just as bad, if not worse, than Brendan Schaub's Gringo Papi, but I think that's not true. For me, Rogan's just an average comedian with a disproportionate amount of reach relative to his talent, which I think is similar to Dane Cook in the early 2000s. But finally, at the very end of the podcast, after listening to Joe talking about his own comedy journey for 2 hours, his 3 development deals, all of the murderers he's been on the road with, and even a Jimi Hendrix impression, Adam Sandler managed to finally get a word in about his own special, which, don't forget, was the whole reason he went on JRE in the first place. But by then, Joe had gotten through all his talking points and decided it was time to wrap it up.
What a fucking odd feeling when you think about going on stage and just going, yeah, I'm basically telling all you people, just watch me for an hour.
Right.
Just watch me. It's worth your time.
I know you drove. You got babysitters.
Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah, you bought tickets in advance. You planned your day out.
What a psycho of a human being to just go, let me fucking come look at this. Yeah,
You'd
man.
be so prepared.
My special, this one, I did probably 2.5 hours of shit and had to cut it. You know, Josh Safdie and we all had to pick the shit we thought was the right shit. But I did have so much shit. By the time I did the special, I just came off the road. Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I pee for one?
Yeah, we can wrap this up. We've done 2 hours and 40 minutes.
We did?
So, yeah, this is.
We've been in there.
That's what's messed up. Because if you grew up, you know, with Sandler, like Sandler's a legend, and he's funny. The thing is earlier they said they took 2 different paths, right? And kind of similar. But the thing is like, you could name Sandler movie after Sandler movie. I mean, Happy Gilmore, The Wedding Singer. Like The Wedding Singer, like just bangers. I mean, and then he even like tackled rom-coms with like 31st Base. You know, you got a little feeling at the end, you know, Sandler like showing emotional, and then you know the Diamond one where he's the gambler. You see that edgy, like, whoa, like Sandler, stop, man, stop betting the money, you know. And then Wedding Singer, you know, I can't tell you how many times, who did not have the CD, the soundtrack of The Wedding Singer, or that one song where Adam's mad and he's like, you don't know how much I need you. Yeah, there's always bullshit, and stuff like that. It's pretty crazy. That Sandler just killed it. And Joe Rogan, I don't think anybody mentions his special. He's had all these episodes. Not one person has ever brought up his well, I'm sure they have. But they were only trying to get a promo, you know?
That long?
Yeah, we've been in
Get insane.
This is the setup.
Look that's my first. So Josh Safdie, he directed it. He wanted it to feel like you're getting to hang out with me. And it's kind of like just goes on throughout the show that wasn't supposed to happen, and that's that. It shows me before a show, during the show, and after the show. That was not a comedy club. It was just a little theater that they do. These people bought a theater. They put on little plays there, and then Josh liked it, and they made it kind of feel like a stand-up.
That's awesome.
You know what? You know, you see things like I think I noticed it, right? Like I just mentioned, like the Backstreet Boys, these like poppy fads that people come in. And when you're young, you know, there's a reason why old people aren't listening to the Backstreet Boys, right? Or NSYNC or stuff like that. There's a reason, because when you're young, like that candy pop, that quick success, that manufactured sugar with no substance, right? You're drawn to it. It's easy when you're young. But something I'm appreciating, you know, when Sandler mentions he has a little theater and a stage and everything, something that I really, really like now that I'm older is the craftsmanship, man. It's just so crazy, you know, just to see people. And you could tell Adam's a craft, like he loves comedy as a craftsman, because it wasn't about having a huge theater or wasn't about a fancy production. It was about being in a space, you know, a space where people like him, you know, just could work and appreciate their craft. And I really appreciate that, man. It's kind of crazy how Joe Rogan just ain't catching on yet.
And when is it out? What day?
The 27th. August 27th, yeah.
Okay, it's a couple weeks from now.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Congrats on yours. Congrats on everything, bud.
Thanks. Congratulations to you, too.
My piss ended the whole thing. I appreciate
it's all good.
All right, right on, man.
Yeah, it seemed like Sandler was having a good time and wanted to stay and chat. I don't think he does many long-form interviews, and like I was saying at the beginning, he seems like
that's sad he cut it off.
Cool stories, but instead, Joe kept dragging the conversation back to the art of stand-up. I would have expected this episode to go well over 3 hours, but it seems like Joe's been keeping the episodes shorter these days for some reason. Maybe it's because he's got to get over to the mothership and hit the green room to hang out with his comedy brain buddies. I don't know, it ended up being pretty disappointing. Out of the last 7 episodes, this was the shortest one. I mean, the podcast with Terrence Howard and Eric Weinstein went for over 4 hours, but we only got just over 2 hours with Adam Sandler.
Yeah, it sucks.
Remember to check out the link in the description to my Patreon if you want to see my breakdown of Joe's latest comedy special, as well as my upcoming breakdown of Kill Tony's weekend at MSG. There's also a bunch of other stuff on there as well, so go and check it out, support the channel. Also, if you're not a regular of this channel yet, hit the subscribe button and don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you ended up enjoying this video. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.
Well, News Radio was fortunate because I got to play like a more retarded version of myself. It was like basically like into a lot of conspiracy theories and weird and delusional. It was like a version of me.
Yeah, if you like podcast or the comedy, the Joe Rogan sphere and the comedy scene stuff, and like it's basically like all the comedians in their podcasts. This guy, Podcast Cringe, has had a pretty rapid rise to success, and he makes good stuff. He takes his time. He makes really poppin' thumbnails. And you know, like me, I don't really like drama in my life, but you know, a little bit of this, like the gamer world drama and the comedy drama, man, I'm a sucker for it. You know, I'm not going to lie. I'm a sucker for it. I am a sucker for it. And also a sucker for Action Bronson's cooking show, man. If you're not watching Action Bronson right now on YouTube and the stuff he's doing, he's making a restaurant. He is just prepping to make a restaurant. The Action Bronson narrative arc right now is phenomenal. Go watch that too. I think I'm going to review Action Bronson next because I just want to do what I want to do. So thank you guys. If you stuck along, probably nobody did, but have a good day. Peace.